Definitely will.
Okay, everyone, and we are back. Diversitech Fest 2022, and we are here with our next session from side hustle to MVP. We have professionals here who have done everything from outsourcing their technologies to using no code tools, as well as bootstrapping their way to amazing products. I was able to reach out to my friend Jeanette Seha, who will be co hosting today. So, a little bit about Jeanette. She is an award winning travel journalist and television host. She has appeared on BBC World News, WTTW Chicago, ABC 7, Los Angeles, Fox 11 Los Angeles, the Mexico Travel Channel, Spectrum News 1, and how do you pronounce this? QC News, among others. She's a journalist, uh, graduate of Belmont University and the professional producing program at the University of California, Los Angeles. She completed internships at Fox News Chicago, WTVF CBC in Nashville, and the Tennessean Daily newspaper. She was accepted into the CHIPS Quinn Scholars Program for Diversity in Journalism, and she is here to moderate as well as help co host for today and tomorrow as well. So, welcome, Jeanette. I will let you take it over, but I'm so happy that you are here.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm so happy to be here as well and to be part of Diversitech. Again, like Shannon mentioned, my name is Jeanette, so I'm honored to be part of this conversation and to learn more about our amazing speakers. Without further ado, I will introduce them by name and then I will give them the opportunity to tell us a little bit about themselves and their company. I will start first with Jillian Anderson, founder and CEO of Her Ride, is with us. We also have Jason Sherman, entrepreneur from Istan Amor, and Christian Pavarelli, CEO of We Are No Code. Thank you all for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And we can start with Jillian.
Sure, no problem. Again, my name is Jillian Anderson. I'm originally from Athens, Georgia. I'm the founder of Her Ride. Her Ride is a female-friendly rideshare app. We are based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And right now we're currently in our beta testing stage. So we are currently live on the App Store and we're taking rides in Atlanta right now. We have about over 25,000 downloads on the app, and we're currently raising money for our pre-seed round.
Amazing. Thank you, Jillian. Christian, would you like to tell us a little about yourself? And also, where are you speaking to us from? What part of the country or town are you in?
Yeah, so I'm Christian. Nice to meet everyone. Hola a todos, los latinos que están aquí también, porque claro, aquí es Diversitech. The point is that we're able to speak in several languages and it's highly inclusive. So my name is Christian. I essentially am an entrepreneur turned startup accelerator program manager, turned CEO of my fourth company, We Are No Code. So our main goal is to help non-technical people launch businesses, leveraging no-code technologies and proven methodologies. And so, it basically just came from the process of running into all of the frustrations over the past 15 years of building companies as a non-technical person, like hiring developers, outsourcing to teams. And then I realized that all these same problems were occurring in 90% of the cases when I was running the accelerator in LA. So there I trained 100 founders. They raised more than 50 million in funding and got into programs like Techstars, Y Combinator, 500 Startups, etc. And so I just realized there was a huge problem in this market where a lot of people were just kind of, accepting the cream of the crop, investing in the cream of the crop. But a lot of people didn't really have a direct path towards sort of how to build their businesses early on. And a lot of the education around entrepreneurship is just not actionable. And then people are just not learning the hard skills required. And so, yeah, that's what we do at We Are No Code, train 450 founders from 23 countries and super excited about no code. I'm not against code. I'm not against raising capital, even though I've bootstrapped and raised capital for several companies. I just think it's important that everyone understands the implications of each one of the paths they choose to go down. So happy to be here.
I love that. Thank you, Christian. And I will add, he also speaks about 4 languages, so um, which is amazing. So if you know any other languages, you can also talk with him. And last but not least, let's get to know Jason. Jason, can you tell us a little bit about yourself,
Sure.
your company?
Thanks for having me. Gracias y hola a todos. Un placer para estar aquí. I also speak Spanish. Like Christian was saying, I've also helped a lot of founders over the years, a lot of trial and error over the past 20 years of building startups, whether it was a tech platform or a physical product, and also graduating from an accelerator, launching my own apps, raising money. But what I found more than anything was the majority of entrepreneurs don't know how to not only validate their concept, but also build an MVP, minimum viable product, which people seem to skip a lot. They like to get to the finish line by building version 4 instead of version 1 of their platforms. So what I teach people, either through my book, my podcast, my courses online or at universities, is to take the steps one by one, validate your product, find a target market, and then show people your concept before building it. And we live in 2022. There are so many different ways we can leverage technology nowadays that you can fast track a prototype without knowing any kind of code. So what I do to help people is figure out the right path for them and guide them through the process, because it's scary. And I do it with my own startups. So I practice what I preach.
Amazing. I'm really excited about this conversation, as I'm sure all our attendees are. We're going to learn a lot from you amazing speakers, entrepreneurs joining us from all over the world. So today's panel discussion is from side hustle to MVP without learning to code. So let's get started with the first question, and I leave it open to anyone who wants to start the conversation. What no code or low code platforms or apps do you recommend?
This is a question that we get every single day. And I think the answer really just depends on what stage you're at within your company, right? If you're at the idea stage, if you just have an idea, it also has to do with the tools themselves. So there are thousands of tools out there. There are a lot of aspects that you want to consider: size of community, functionality, longevity. Like, will they be around in 3 years? Is it worth learning this for the longer term? And then understanding the possibilities of each platform. So, like, a great example is a lot of people, as Jason kind of mentioned, they jump in and they're just like, I want to build the whole car. And it's like, great, it's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to build the first iteration that you're not even sure. And in most cases, people go to market and there's really no demand for that product, or it's very different. So unbuilding, rebuilding, you just have to understand that's a part. Like, iterating early stage is just a really integral part in determining what the end product looks like. So you come in with an idea, don't be in love with your idea, be in love with your vision, and then be flexible enough to look at the results. Now, beating around the bush, platforms that we recommend. So I love platforms like Card, if you're looking to build a very basic landing page, or Unbounce, if you're looking to build kind of a more dynamic website and really beautiful websites, Webflow. If you're looking to build web apps, I would recommend to check out bubble.io. I would also recommend to check out Softer if you're looking to build a web app but have very little technical skills. If you're looking to build on the mobile front a little bit more, then I would recommend Glide or Adalo. I think that's kind of the point, is just that, like, people, not only do they have, like, all these technologies are out there, the possibilities are infinite. I can talk about those forever if you'd like, but it's more about identifying what you should be building right now. And sometimes it's not product even. Sometimes you need to go back to the market, and you need to go back to sales, customer discovery, and understanding the learnings you need to then build the next iteration of the product or add a new feature to the product. Like, a lot of people talk about building customer first businesses. Like, that means, like, really, really always being in direct contact with the end customers. And, as an entrepreneur, lots of people love to outsource that. Oh, can I get someone else to do this stuff? You're the one who has decision-making power in your company. You're the one who has to have those conversations so that you can make informed decisions. And if you're not building for your customers, like, who are you building for, right? Yourself? Like that's great if you just want a product for yourself, and that's absolutely something you can do with no code as well. Increase your
Christian,
productivity.
I don't want to cut you off, but you're bringing up a really good point that I want to touch on. You're saying that the entrepreneurs need to wear the hats and learn the hard skills needed to iterate and build. And this is something that I consistently try to etch into their brains, is that they need to do as much as they possibly can on their own before trying to bring somebody on the team. Because if not, then they don't understand not only what they're building, but what people want. They just, I'll hire this person, I'll hire this person. Next thing you know, they have this beast of a platform that does too many things, right?
Yeah. And the problem is that money will not solve product market fit. I know the people with the most money are the people who waste the most money. And because you can throw money to people, but figuring out the product market fit will not be resolved by hiring, an additional person. To the contrary, as you mentioned, you really want to go into those deeper learnings so that you can then even, like, let's put it this way. Everyone jumps into entrepreneurship like thinking like, oh, I'm like a high level executive, or like, I'm successful in my job. I have the skills required. For me, that's like, I want to be a doctor. I'm going to walk straight into a room and perform a surgery. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you need a totally different skill set to be a founder, which usually requires being pretty good at several things and understanding them well enough to then be able to eventually, when you get more resources, replace yourself in areas that you're better at. But getting the training is probably the most important thing, I think, for early stage entrepreneurs, because right now it's like piecing together YouTube videos, watching podcasts, feeling like you're becoming an entrepreneur. And the reality is you're not building the hard skills, you're taking no action, and it's just a continual, this has been happening for 15 years. The reason why I started We Are No Code is because I got so frustrated that I had gone through this myself and like literally lived the hardships of like one of the companies failed because of all these things. And then realizing this is exactly what's happening today. And then also being buddies and friends with all of the investors in the LA ecosystem and the accelerator programs, and understanding how they operated. And they had the same problem. Like 95% of people who apply for investment or to get into the accelerators are not at all prepared. And so, it left me in a spot where it's like, well, you can continue to be a part of that, or you can start, really getting your hands dirty and helping people get there. And so I think that it kind of was like, I built the company as a necessity, because I feel like if I had that program, if no code even existed back in the day, like that was awesome. But the other thing people have to understand, 90% of all the apps in the App Store are zombie apps, not used in the past 30 days. So you can build products, but the bigger problem is that if you're not leveraging the right methodology in parallel to learning no-code tools, like code or no code, like you have to take a holistic approach to the way that you are building your companies. It's not enough just to build an amazing product. It's not enough to just, have all of the skills that you learn in an entrepreneurship MBA, but have no actionable steps, or not take action towards those, or not know how to build things. Like every opportunity is an online opportunity. And with that, I almost consider you can't consider yourself an entrepreneur anymore if you don't learn the basics of technical skills. Even if you're selling apples, you need to build a website and maintain that, and you have to have suppliers that or buyers that kind of come through that system. So there's a lot that you have, like people just need to upskill. And I was
going to say the same thing, yeah. Christian. This works for literally every single industry, right? Everything you just said, it could be for a movie you made, or a book you wrote, or a song that you wrote, or a podcast that you've released. Doesn't matter what it is. You need to be able to get a market out there as well. Anybody can build an app, right? You can hire a company to build an app. Marketing it is even more difficult, because now you're dealing with oversaturation probably in your market. You're probably dealing with fatigue. People are tired of another app. You know what I mean? So just because you built it doesn't mean they're going to come. It's not like that old adage, 100%. But you are right about, you mentioned founders. I was going to say, you mentioned founders spending like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the reason why that really resonated with me, and I want this to bring home to the 100 people listening right now. If you spend $250,000 on an app because you think your idea is the next $1 billion idea, you're probably wrong. Like Christian said, 90% of the apps fail. And just because you think your idea is great doesn't mean you should just throw all this money at it. You should still take the steps necessary to build, iterate, get feedback, build, iterate, get feedback, and so on and so forth till you refine an MVP. And this is the mistake 99% of entrepreneurs who come to me have already done before they even come. So it's a nightmare, like Christian said, and that's why we've kind of built our methodologies, right? That's why we've done this, because
Yes. Thank
I'd
you.
love to hear Jillian's take on
Yeah.
this, actually.
yeah,
I
definitely.
was just gonna ask Jillian what her thoughts are. Thank you.
I'm actually probably the outlier of this conversation. I actually do know how to code, so I got my degree in computer science. So I do know how to code. But when it comes to answering the question, I think the best no code platform that I found is actually buildfire.com. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. It's kind of like, it's very similar to Wix. Um, it's like Wix, but if you want to make a mobile app or a web app. And so I like it for that reason alone. And I think that people that want to figure out if they do want a mobile app could use that platform and just figure out, like, okay, is like a lot. I know a lot of trainers have come to me and say, hey, I need help, or I want an app. Well, does your business actually need a mobile app? That's like one of the first questions that you should ask yourself as a business owner, because mobile apps are expensive. They're expensive to host. They're expensive to maintain. And so if you're not a very technical person, you should really like sit down with yourself and decide, like, having a mobile app, will it accelerate or scale my business to the level that it needs to be scaled? But yeah, buildfire.com, great resource.
Thank you, Jillian. And I want to ask our panel the next question. You kind of touched upon maybe some of the challenges that maybe an early entrepreneur may have experienced. What other challenges have you experienced? And do you have any other advice for any one of our attendees out there who might want to follow in a similar journey as you?
Yes, for sure. For sure. My app, I actually had my app outsourced overseas. And so the biggest challenge for me was language barrier and time. So the time zones, they work 12 hours, no, 8 hours behind, or 8 hours ahead. Yeah, 8 hours ahead. And so whenever I would have to get in contact with them, it would be at midnight. And so that's when I would start my day with my development team, would be at midnight, all the way up until 6, 7 o'clock in the morning sometimes. And so those are the two biggest struggles, was the language barrier. And if you're not technically inclined, if you're not technically savvy, you need to have someone that is technically savvy on your team if you're going to outsource the development of your app, because a lot of companies can try to get over on you if you are not tech savvy. And I will say that they'll try to make you spend money that you don't even need to spend, or they may go into your application or your program and break something that was already working. And if you're not knowledgeable on how code works, and how code functions, you can end up paying money for something that you shouldn't even have to pay money for. So that is something to keep aware of. Just because you want to go the cheap route does not always mean that it's the best route. Just make sure that you are tech savvy, like I said, because going the cheap route can come with issues like that.
Yeah, she's absolutely right, because this happens every single day. There is a way to combat this. The first couple things I would mention is using a task management tool like Trello or something, Basecamp, where you can keep track of exactly what's being built, what's broken, what's being tested. And then when you have an outsourced team, because most of my clients are using outsourced companies as well that I manage for them as a project manager, we get separate testers. This is the key, right? Get 2 to 3 people who are consistently testing your app that have nothing to do with the company, because this way you have someone who's on their time zone, who's working with them at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning while you're asleep, and they're testing, and providing videos, screenshots, and bugs in Trello, so that when you wake up, you see all the stuff they just did, and immediately it's all fixed when you wake up, right? This is the kind of stuff that people should be doing. But Jillian's right. You need a secondary code checker. So, someone like Christian, for example, or even myself, I started out as a developer back in the day, and my platform of choice, I never answered it, was React.js. That's pretty much what we build everything in nowadays. But what we do is we hire a separate company, South America. Los Latinos ahí, nos encantamos en Colombia. You got some great developers in Colombia. We hire them and pay them like $1,000, and they just check the entire code base, they test the entire platform and make sure everything is working well, because they have nothing to lose, right? And they're not going to lie to us. And they might get a new customer, because we might say, we love how you work, we're going to switch over to you guys. So definitely get code checkers, definitely get testers, definitely use task management.
I would argue that and this is something that people don't really expect when I talk about this. And I think Jillian kind of started like saying, you know, I have a different background. I'm a coder. No code is also for coders. It's just a visual programming language. Allows you to build 4 times quicker than you can build in code. And for early stages, I would highly recommend for there to be zero coding done. Specifically, when you're an early stage startup, you do not need to build complicated products to be able to test the market, understand what the needs are. And so, yeah, I think it's like the word no code is maybe misleading because it makes it seem like there's no code behind anything, but there's code behind everything. And I think that there are no code platforms that are literally for developers. And then I just think that like in the early stages where most people are getting wrecked, and I say wrecked, I mean like 2 years of your life, all of your savings spent, and then you fail the company. And trust me, that is, I've gone through that. It's not the funnest thing. It makes you kind of believe, you know, this is maybe not for me. Now, working with overseas teams, you can sometimes get really cheap products done. And guess what? You know, you get what you pay for. Oftentimes, what I've seen is that people end up spending, oh, it's only $5,000, $6,000. It comes back super buggy, spaghetti code. It's a waste of money. You can't use it. And so I think I almost take a different approach, which is to say, like, as an entrepreneur, you have, if you're running a company, every company is a tech company. You have to learn the basics of technology. That doesn't mean you have to become a full-on coder. It just means that you need to learn enough so that you can understand who to hire. You need to understand what to build. You need to understand for who you're building that. And that doesn't require a huge amount of money. It's like, you know, one of the things that we put a huge emphasis on at We Are No Code is like, learn the process. And then next time you have an idea, you can take action really quickly. And we're seeing people launching platforms in like 3 weeks. You know, us personally, like yesterday in 1 day, we built an entire platform. Now, of course, we have experience leveraging no-code tools now, but the power of this is like, it's like insane. And that's where I say like, no-code is just the future of building products in general. Even people who are coders, like these platforms are becoming more and more and more sophisticated, but visual programming is just the direction that programming is going. In the same way that, and for that you need to understand programming evolution. Like it started with punch cards that we were putting into a computer because that's probably the size of your house, and because there was like holes in those which represented ones and zeros. Now computers understand ones and zeros. That's how we program them, we talk to them, et cetera, et cetera. After a bit of time and after processing power got better, we essentially invented programming languages. So a language that you had to learn to be able to tell the ones and zeros what to do, right? A language to communicate with the computer. And now when we talk about no code, it's just visual programming. So it's this idea that you can, you don't have to write out each individual line of code. You'd be able to, and in the future, there's already voice activated coding, AI, like programming. So this is just the evolution of something that's naturally going to continue to become an additional layer of abstraction from the ones and zeros that we started off with.
And Christian, this is probably why, like, what's the percentage of websites that are built on WordPress? Is it like 40%?
40%.
So like half of the websites online are on WordPress, which is a no-code platform, right? You just type and drag and drop. I mean, I've been using it for years too. So I totally agree. And I would go back even further to your point about not building a lot in the beginning, because a lot of people are doing that. And what I always tell people to do is when you're showing your phone to somebody and your app, right? When you're on the street, maybe doing surveys at colleges like we've done before, you don't have to actually show an app. You just have to show screenshots that you designed in Photoshop or InVision or some other prototyping tool that looks like an app and it acts like an app, but it's not an app. And just say, what do you think of these screens? What do you think of this functionality? What do you think of the colors and the style, typography, the lettering, the button placement, the navigation? Get the feedback before you actually build anything. But people they never want to do that. They just want to build it. So I go back and I argue, do not build anything until you are 100% positive what you're showing people is exactly what they want.
Super.
I might be a bit of a contrarian on this point.
I know.
I
You and I are going to butt
fully
heads on
agree.
this one.
And the reason why is because to get to the next level, to get investment and into accelerators, you need to have traction. Like back in the day, I was raising with just like a pitch deck and like a credible team. And then over time, like now 80% of seed deals are going towards startups with revenue. Like let that sink in.
Yep.
It means that if you don't have a product or if you don't have paying customers, you are quite far from being able to raise capital. And for me, what I've realized is that yes, you could build out all the designs, but in no-code platforms, you can actually build out the functionalities as you're building out those designs. Now, I agree with you that there is value in showing sort of screenshots of things, but the reality is that the difference between what people say they like and do and what they actually do is so huge that I almost find I usually go straight from sketches straight into building. So it's like test the market with leveraging sort of a landing page and understanding the value proposition, because understand it, no one is buying your product. No one's buying your blockchain. No one cares about your AI. They want a solution to your problem. So let's take Tinder as an example. What do you care about in Tinder? Getting matched with other people. Great. Did you know they have a super complex matching algorithm behind it? Yeah, sure, that's great. That adds additional value. But in the end of the day, if you can just match me with people who are, like, I'm happy. So it's like, remember that the product is not the end in of itself. The value that you deliver to customers is. And once you nail that and which customer you should go after and which ones you shouldn't, then you use product to be able to get the value of what you deliver into more people's hands scalably. But early on, do a lot of things that are not scalable to get there.
You mentioned this word a lot just now. Sorry, Jeanette, just real quick. I want to kind of just finish this off. This thought is he mentions the word value. In the courses I teach, the biggest thing that we ask people to look for when they are showing the MVP or the prototypes, screenshots, whatever you want to call it, is the core value proposition, right? And what I have found, this is just from my experience, Christian, working with, God knows how many developers and startups over the world, is that they find the core value proposition after showing these screenshots and prototypes to people consistently, right? Because they thought that the matching algorithm was their CVP. But what they found when they were talking to people and showing Herod or whatever the app is to people on just screenshots alone, well, actually, I don't care about that. I care about that thing that you just showed me. What was that thing? Oh, well, that feature is something else. Well, what is that? Show that to me. And then you show it to them and they say, well, that's what I want. That's the market telling you that they want that CVP that you thought was just another feature. And that's why you shouldn't build it first. You should let the market dictate what they want first by showing them, and then build the MVP, then iterate, get feedback, and build more and more and more using no code or other platforms.
Wow, this has been so insightful. And I'm sorry, just because we have a short amount of time left, we do have a few questions from our attendees in the Q&A, and I wanted just to have an opportunity to ask the questions, and it's open to our speakers, whoever would like to answer. I definitely think we should have a part 2 because this conversation is so fascinating and insightful. Juan Giarzo asks our panel, how critical is product mapping and what is the critical aspect to design a viable product? And I open this to the panel.
Jillian, come on, Jillian.
Yeah, I'll answer. How critical is product mapping? I would think that it's pretty. I would think that it's pretty critical. So for my app is for women by women. So we are a women rideshare app. All the drivers on our platform are women, and so in order for me to even develop this app, I had to figure out what women wanted when it came to rideshare, and so I think that is pretty critical. Now, in terms of mapping and actually putting it on paper, I will say that I'm the founder that doesn't write stuff down, and I'm terrible at it. But that's just how my mind functions. So I can't really. I mean, I'm gonna tell people put it on a flow chart. If you're not me, put it on a flow chart, map it out, ask the questions, do your surveys. I actually did surveys. I did a survey when I was working at pizza delivery of about 75 women that came into the store that day and asked them, hey, if you had the option to take to pick your gender on rideshare on Uber or Lyft, would you choose a woman? They were like, yeah. Like literally 90% of the women said yes. So at that point, I knew that I had a target market, and so I knew that my product would generate sales once I finished it or completed it. So yes, it is very critical.
If you saw the amount of workflow maps and flow charts and brainstorming and whiteboards that I have for every single business I've ever either helped run or run myself, it's like we don't build until that stuff is figured out, because so many, and Christian's nodding his head because he knows that 90% of entrepreneurs who have like a 10-page technical document, they build all of it and then they realize half of it was worthless or they shouldn't have done things a certain way. You got to map it out before. It's like the blueprint to a house. Christian said, you don't just build a car, right? Well, you don't just build a house. You got to blueprint it. You got to build a foundation and the walls and the framing. You got to get everything by an architect. Same goes for an engineer who's developing a platform. I have infrastructure diagrams for my database infrastructure. You know, everything has to be done. API documents, everything has to be laid out. If it's not, you're just going to fail. It happens over and over and over again, and it's proven. So just get everything out in the open before you build anything.
So good. Christian, do you want to add anything, or we can also go to the next question from one of our attendees?
Yeah, I mean, I think that absolutely you need to plan these things out. I mean, oftentimes you realize what you didn't think of when you start planning, and that I think is the more important thing, is to like understand how this entire thing would and will work. But you know, I'm definitely of the mentality of like analysis paralysis. So I think you need to do like the 80-20 rule. It's like spend 20% of your time to get 80% of the results planning. And then when you jump in to actually start building, and you know, for us, it's awfully often it's going to be with no code, because we can get something out of the door in a couple of weeks. And then we can actually, you know, test it, and then we'll be able to iterate and adapt. And I think when you go down the coding route, that might be something that you need to jump into from no code once you reach maybe a couple 100,000 users in your platform, which is a great place to be, by the way. The thing with coding is just it takes longer. It's not that it's final, but it's like, yeah, you're investing a lot of time, so you better know exactly what it is. So I think that with no code, it requires a little bit less of the of the planning, although you want to do 80% of that planning with kind of 20% of your I guess time or the, you know, energy. But then I think, you know, for me, I've just kind of shifted from building everything with code into no code, and the results that is produced for myself and my students have been incredible. So, you know, I'm also maybe just a little bit biased at this point in terms of the journey that should be adopted when it comes to building things. You know, for us, we just build things really quickly and get them out there, and then the market is going to tell us. And the market's going to tell us because we're going to see how they're using it. And then we're going to continue those conversations. Like, nothing's a miracle. You don't want to like build the product and then, okay, it works, now let's just market it. No, you need to understand deep, like I'm telling you, like I've been on phone calls talking about people's dogs for like hours, just to get the insight that shows me which direction this product has to go into. And don't just trust one person's advice. You can't change every time one person says something about your product. You need to have this both qualitative information, so like deep insight into like that customer, what they need, but then you also need quantitative, like, okay, out of 100 people, like, you know, what are people saying in terms of maybe what next feature they're looking for, or the most important feature to build first, or things like that. So yeah, that's my take on it.
That's why I love surveys and analytics. Surveys and analytics.
So good. You guys, we have so many incredible questions. I'm worried we might run out of time, but before we do, can you all just share with our attendees where they can find you, how they can contact you, just in case we run out of time before the session?
Jillian, you want to start?
I'll go first. Yeah, you guys can contact me at LinkedIn. I believe I'm going to drop my LinkedIn link in here. I believe like the ending of my LinkedIn is The Real Bob, but I'm just going to tag it in here. You can find me on Twitter at The Real BOP. I'm on Instagram at The Real Jill Gates, and then I'm available. The quickest way you can get in contact with me is by email at admin@getherride.com, and it's her ride with one R.
I just posted my website, jasonsherman.org. On there, you'll see my podcast, my book, my YouTube, my LinkedIn, all the links to everything. And then you can try out my app, Instamore. It's on the App Store. We released it again after 9 years. We released it again about 2 months ago. We've been working on this for a long time. But yeah, jasonsherman.org is the easiest place to find me.
Amazing. Christian?
So for me, you can check out wearenocode.com if you want to see what we do in our full program, which is kind of the equivalent of an MBA for non-technical entrepreneurs. And then LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. We also have so I posted my LinkedIn right here. Also, we have a YouTube channel where we put out a bunch of free content, like just tips and tricks for non-technical entrepreneurs, like about no-code tools, about how to go to market. We also have a 100% free course of how to launch your startup as a non-technical entrepreneur. That's in my profile on LinkedIn. So you can click through to that and essentially join that free program so you can get the basis. So if you're at the early stages, just make sure to go in there and make sure that you're understanding the full process from start to finish. That's really valuable. But yeah, feel free to reach me out through like LinkedIn directly if you'd like to chat.
So incredible. This has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you, Jillian, Jason, and Christian. We're out of time, but before we go, I'll just ask the final question for our 102 attendees right now. What advice would you give them? What's a final piece of advice for them, wherever they are on their journey? And we can start with you, Jason. Or Jillian.
Yeah, I was pointing out.
Okay. My final piece of advice would be for anybody that's thinking about starting a company or starting an app. Trademark your name. Focus on trademark the name first. That's the first thing I did for Her Ride. I trademarked the name before I even found a team to develop my app because I believed in the name that much and the brand. And so trademarking, do that.
Mine is pretty much what I've been driving home this whole time, is to build as much as you possibly can by yourself before hiring anybody. Learn as many skills as you can to prototype, get your vision and your designs out there to show people, get as much feedback as you possibly can before you actually build something, and then go to somebody like Christian to help you out, or me or Jillian to guide you along the development process.
Awesome. Yeah, my advice would be, well, I think first of all, like, invest in yourself. I think the thing that will be the most beneficial for you if your ultimate goal is to be an entrepreneur, whether you nail this first startup or not, learn the skills on how to build and launch your company. Full stop. Like, there are, you need to become pretty good at several things and kind of a master of none to be an entrepreneur. So it's not going to be in line with your specialty job that you have usually. And so getting the proper training oftentimes is going to save you the most money, because the biggest expense, apart from hiring coders and all that, is the amount of time that it takes you, like your rent, your car, all that. So it's like, if something can take 6 months or 3 instead of 12, or 3 instead of 6, that's just a huge amount of money saved. And then the other thing I'd say is that work on yourself personally, because every personal limitation that you have is going to reflect in your startup. And finally, I'd say for those of you who are in, like maybe Latinos, or like people in situations where they have not always been told, like, hey, this is like for you. Like, I'm a huge proponent that entrepreneurship is a learned skill. Like, sí se puede, ustedes sí pueden hacerlo. No necesitan a nadie para ayudarles, nomás tomar el tiempo para hacerlo ustedes. So just honestly, like, take the time, be patient in the long term for results, and be incredibly impatient with the action that you take on a daily basis. Like, make sure you're working on the right things, because grinding. I love that, people love talking about that. I personally don't, because if you're grinding in the wrong direction, you're going nowhere. So learn the skills, equip yourself to be able to launch any startup idea that you get when you get them, and believe in yourself, work on yourself. Growth, ultimately.
This has been amazing. I myself am so inspired by you all. Thank you so much. So many of the attendees are raving about what you guys are saying, learning. We get so many questions in the Q&A. Maybe Tribaja can do part 2 to this amazing discussion and bring you all back. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all our attendees. We are out of time. I'm Jeanette Ceja. I just put my LinkedIn as well. Soy Latina, hablo español. I do a lot for the Latino community as well, as far as travel, tourism, and hosting. So feel free to reach out to me. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.